The colony transport touched down on Vesper 9 with all the grace of a falling brick. Inside the rattling cargo bay, Adrian Holbrook gripped his seat harness and tried not to think about the life he'd left behind on Earth. 3 failed relationships, a career that had plateaued at 32, and a persistent feeling that he was running in place while everyone else sprinted past him. The Vesper Colonial Initiative had seemed like a fresh start, a chance to build something meaningful on a new world. He hadn't expected to be one of only 47 human settlers. The cargo door hissed open, and Vesper's dual suns hit him like a physical force. The air tasted different here, cleaner, almost sweet. "Welcome to paradise," muttered someone behind him. The sarcasm was thick enough to cut. Adrian grabbed his single duffel bag and descended the ramp. The landing zone sprawled before him, all prefabricated structures and red-brown soil that hadn't seen rain in months. Beyond the settlement, purple vegetation climbed distant hills, alien and somehow inviting. A figure approached from the main administrative building. Not human. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her skin a deep azure that shifted to violet in the harsh sunlight. Bioluminescent patterns traced elegant lines along her arms and neck, pulsing with a gentle rhythm that reminded him of a heartbeat. Her eyes were larger than human, with vertical pupils that contracted against the brightness. She wore practical work clothes, dusty and worn, but moved with an unself-conscious grace. Adrian Holbrook? Her voice carried a harmonic undertone, almost like 2 people speaking in perfect unison. "That's me. I'm Tivara, settlement coordinator." She gestured toward the buildings. "Your housing assignment is ready. I apologize for the sparse welcome committee. Most of the staff are managing the water reclamation crisis." "Water crisis?" "The tertiary filtration system failed 3 weeks ago. We've been rationing." She started walking, and he fell into step beside her. "You're the civil engineer, yes?" "Structural engineer, but I've done some work with water systems." For the first time, the patterns on her skin brightened slightly. He would learn later that this indicated relief, hope. The settlement was smaller than he'd expected. Maybe 24 buildings clustered around a central square. Solar panels and atmospheric processors hummed on every rooftop. A few humans moved between structures looking tired and purposeful. But most of the people he saw weren't human at all. They were like Tivara, azure-skinned, tall, graceful. The women and they were all women moved with an economy of motion that suggested adaptation to a harsher environment. They glanced at him as he passed. Some nodded. Others simply stared with those unsettling vertical pupils. "Where are the men?" Adrian asked. "I mean, the males of your species." Tivara's patterns dimmed. "Dead, most of them. The plague took 80% of our males 15 years ago. The survivors." She paused. "They're few, and most have chosen isolation rather than adaptation." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. We survive. We adapt." She stopped before a small hub unit, its door painted a faded blue. "Your quarters. Communal dining is at sunset. First bell. Don't be late." She walked away before he could ask what a bell was, or how he'd know when sunset happened on a planet with 2 suns. Inside, the hab was clean but Spartan. A bed, a desk, a small bathroom. A window overlooked the purple hills. Adrian dropped his bag and sat on the bed, springs creaking beneath him. What had he gotten himself into? The bell turned out to be an actual bell, a brass thing that someone rang in the central square at what passed for evening. Adrian joined the stream of people heading toward the communal dining hall, a long structure with real glass windows. Inside, the air was warm and smelled of unfamiliar spices. Long tables stretched the length of the hall. Humans sat at one end, maybe 20 of them. The rest of the space was filled with Tivara's people. He grabbed a tray and joined the serving line. The food was a mix of earth crops and local produce, something that might have been chicken, vegetables he couldn't name, and a grain that looked like rice but shimmered with an iridescent quality. "You're the new engineer." The voice came from beside him, another of Tivara's people, shorter than most, with patterns that swirled in complex spirals. "I'm Keshra, medical staff." "Adrian, and yes, apparently I am." "Can you actually fix the water system?" "I can try. I'll need to see it first." She nodded, her patterns brightening. "Good, we're down to emergency reserves. Another week, maybe less." They sat together at one of the middle tables, neither fully with the humans nor with the indigenous population. Others joined them. A human woman named Petra who worked in agriculture. A tall indigenous man, the first male Adrian had seen, who introduced himself as Ven and said little else. 2 more indigenous women, sisters named Yalith and Shira, who peppered him with questions about Earth. "Is it true you have cities with millions of people?" Yalith asked. "Some have tens of millions." Her patterns flared bright with amazement. "How do you feed them all?" "Carefully, and not always successfully." The conversation flowed easily, despite the strangeness. Despite the fact that half the people at the table weren't human, Adrian found himself relaxing for the first time since leaving Earth. After dinner, Tivara found him again. "Tomorrow, I'll show you the water system. Dawn. Both suns rise. I'll be ready. One more thing." She hesitated, her patterns flickering in a way he couldn't interpret. "You'll notice that our women outnumber available partners significantly. Many will be interested in you. All the human men here deal with this attention. I apologize if it becomes overwhelming." Adrian felt heat rise to his face. "I'm not looking for— I know, none of you are at first. But loneliness is powerful, for all of us." She turned to leave, then stopped. "Just treat them with respect. That's all I ask." He lay awake that night, listening to unfamiliar sounds through the thin walls. Vesper's night was never truly dark. One sun always visible somewhere on the horizon. Purple light filtered through his window, painting strange shadows. He thought about Tivara's words, about a population decimated by plague, struggling to survive on their own world, about humans arriving, bringing hope and complications in equal measure. He thought about starting over, and what that really meant. Dawn came with brutal efficiency. Adrian stumbled from his hab at the first lightening of the sky to find Tivara already waiting. "The system is at the north edge of settlement," she said. 10-minute walk. The water reclamation facility was larger than he'd expected. A maze of pipes and tanks and filtration units, some clearly human-made, others of indigenous design. Tivara led him through the facility, explaining the problem. "The tertiary filters handle the final purification, removes biological contaminants. 3 weeks ago, the primary unit seized. We've been running on secondaries, but they're overloaded." Adrian examined the failed unit. The damage was obvious. A stress fracture in the main housing caused by thermal expansion. Poor design for a planet with extreme temperature swings. "I can fix this," he said, "but I'll need parts. And time." "Parts we have. The original construction crew left surplus materials. Time." Her patterns dimmed. "We have less of." They spent the morning cataloging what was needed. Tivara proved to be more than just an administrator. She understood the systems, knew every pipe and valve. They worked well together, falling into an easy rhythm of assessment and planning. By midday, Adrian had a plan. Replace the fractured housing, reinforce the mounting points, and add thermal dampeners to prevent future failures. 2 days of work, maybe 3. "I'll help you," Tivara said. "You don't have to." "I do. I know these systems as well as anyone. And there's no one else available." She paused. "Unless you'd prefer to work alone." "No, I'd welcome the help." Her patterns brightened again. That hopeful glow. They started that afternoon. The work was hot, dirty, and demanding. The suns beat down without mercy. Adrian's shirt was soaked through within an hour. Tivara seemed immune to the heat, her azure skin never showing perspiration. "Your people are adapted to this climate?" he asked during a water break. "We evolved here. Our thermal regulation is more efficient than yours." She handed him another canteen. "You should drink more. Humans dehydrate quickly in this heat." "You've worked with humans before?" "For 5 years now, since the first wave arrived." Her pattern shifted to something darker. "We were desperate. The plague had left us without the skills to maintain our infrastructure. We're educators, artists, farmers, not engineers. The Settlement Council reached out to Earth's colonial program, and they sent people. 43 in the first wave, 20 in the second, 47 now, with your group." She paused. "It's not enough, but it's what we could afford." Adrian wiped sweat from his face. "Why not just relocate? Find a less marginal world? This is our home. Our ancestors lived here for 10,000 years. We won't abandon it." Her voice carried absolute certainty. "We'll adapt. We'll survive." They worked until the sun set, making solid progress. The fractured housing was removed, the mounting points cleaned and prepared. Tomorrow they'd install the new components. Adrian's muscles ached as they walked back to the settlement. Tivara moved beside him, her patterns pulsing in a steady, calm rhythm. "You did well today," she said. "Not all humans handle the heat so gracefully." "I'm stubborn." I noticed. There was warmth in her harmonic voice. almost amusement. At the communal hall, the evening meal was already underway. Adrian grabbed food and found himself at the same mixed table as before. Petra was there, and Keshra and the sisters Yelith and Shira. "How's the water project?" Petra asked. "Making progress. Should have it running in a few days." Yalith leaned forward, her patterns bright with curiosity. "Is it true that on Earth, water falls from the sky?" "Rain, yes, all the time in some places." "We have rain," Shira said defensively. "Every few years." "That's not rain," her sister countered. "That's a weather event." They bickered good-naturedly, and Adrian found himself smiling. The strangeness of the situation was fading. These people were just people. Different biology, different history, but fundamentally the same wants and needs. After dinner, Keshra caught his arm. "Walk with me?" They strolled through the settlement as night fell. The purple vegetation glowed faintly in the darkness, bioluminescent in the same way Keshra's patterns were. "You're unmarried," she said. "Not a question." "Yes." "By choice?" Adrian considered how to answer. "By consequence, I guess. Relationships on Earth, they didn't work out. Here, it's different. The ratios, I mean." Her patterns flickered nervously. "There are 74 of us for every human male. The competition is intense." Tivara mentioned something about that. "Did she mention she's interested in you herself?" Keshra's voice carried a teasing note. "What?" "No, she's just being professional." "Adrian, her patterns brighten every time you speak. That's not professionalism." Keshra stopped, facing him. "I'm not asking for anything. Just be aware. Many of us are hoping. Hoping for connection. For the chance at family. Don't play with that hope carelessly." She walked away, leaving him standing in the purple darkness, suddenly aware of the weight of expectations he hadn't asked for. The next 2 days passed in a blur of work. Adrian and Tivara labored over the water system, replacing components, testing connections, reinforcing weak points. They talked while they worked, sharing stories about their respective worlds. Tivara told him about the plague, about watching 80% of the males in her city die over the course of 3 brutal years, about the survivors who couldn't cope, who withdrew into isolation or took their own lives, about the women left behind, forced to maintain a civilization they'd never been trained to run. "We were matrilineal but not matriarchal," she explained. "The genders had different roles, complementary. When the males died, we lost more than partners. We lost half our knowledge base." "What caused it? The plague?" "A mutation in a common virus, something harmless that became deadly. Our medical science couldn't respond fast enough." Her patterns dimmed to nearly black. "We saved the children, the few male children who existed. They're teenagers now, but there are so few, maybe 300 across the whole planet. That's not enough for genetic diversity." "No, it's not." She was quiet for a moment. "That's why we accepted the colonial proposal. Not just for the engineering skills, for the possibility of hybrid offspring. Our biologies are compatible enough with medical intervention." Adrian nearly dropped the wrench he was holding. "Compatible? You didn't know?" The recruitment materials mentioned cultural exchange and skill sharing. Nothing about reproduction. Tivara's patterns flickered with something that might have been embarrassment. "I apologize. I assumed you'd been informed. That's why most of you came, isn't it? The human men? I came to build things, to start over professionally." "Oh." The patterns dimmed again. "I see." They worked in silence for the next hour. The air felt heavier somehow, weighted with unspoken implications. By late afternoon on the 3rd day, they had the new system online. Water flowed through the repaired filters, clear and pure. Testing confirmed all contaminants were being removed. The crisis was over. Tivara's patterns blazed brilliant azure, so bright Adrian had to squint. "You did it. We did it. Team effort. No, this was you, your expertise, your persistence." She placed a hand on his shoulder. Her skin was cool despite the heat, the bioluminescent patterns pulsing against his shirt. "Thank you." The moment stretched. Her large eyes met his, vertical pupils dilated wide. Her hand remained on his shoulder, her expression open and vulnerable. Adrian stepped back carefully. "I should clean up, file a report." The patterns dimmed. "Of course, yes." He walked back to his hab alone, his mind churning. He hadn't come here looking for romance. Definitely hadn't come looking for an interspecies relationship with the weight of an entire civilization's reproductive hopes behind it. He'd come to escape the complications of Earth, not to wade into deeper ones. but he couldn't stop thinking about Tivara's dimming patterns, about the hope dying in her eyes. That night at dinner, he sat with the human group. They welcomed him easily, their conversation a mix of complaints and dark humor. The food was mediocre. The work was hard. The heat was unbearable. The indigenous women were persistent. "You haven't experienced persistent yet," a man named Tobias said. "Wait until they realize you're available. It's flattering for about a week. Then it gets exhausting." "They're just lonely," another man, Chen, countered. "Can you blame them?" "I don't blame them. But I didn't sign up to be a walking sperm bank either." The conversation felt wrong to Adrian, reductive, dismissive of the very real trauma and struggle the indigenous population had endured. He left early, walking back to his hab through the purple darkness. Halfway there, he found Keshra waiting outside his door. "You fixed the water," she said. "That's my job. It's more than that. You've given us another few months, maybe longer if the system holds." Her patterns pulsed slowly, thoughtfully. "Tivara told me you didn't know about the reproduction protocols." She mentioned it, yes. "Are you angry?" Adrian leaned against the wall of his hab. "No, just overwhelmed. I came here to build things, to feel useful. I didn't expect to become some kind of commodity." "Is that how you see it? As being used?" "I don't know what I see yet." Keshra moved closer, her patterns brightening slightly. "May I tell you something about Tivara?" He nodded. She lost her bondmate to the plague, and both her brothers. She was training to be a musician before it happened. She taught herself engineering out of necessity, learned through trial and error while watching her city crumble. She's been settlement coordinator for 8 years. She's 34 years old and has never allowed herself to hope for personal happiness because she's too busy keeping everyone else alive. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because when she talks about you, her patterns brighten like they haven't in years. Because she's my friend, and I want her to have something good." Keshra paused. "But also because you deserve to know what your choices mean. To her, to all of us." She left him standing in the purple darkness, more confused than ever. The next week passed in a blur of projects. The water system was stable, so Adrian moved on to structural assessments. Several buildings showed stress fractures from thermal expansion. The solar panel arrays needed reinforcement against wind damage. The atmospheric processors required recalibration. He worked with different people each day. Petra showed him the agricultural domes where earth crops struggled in alien soil. Yalif took him to the education center, where indigenous children learned alongside the handful of human kids. Ven, the quiet indigenous male, helped him survey the northern boundary, where plans for expansion had stalled. Everyone was friendly, everyone was grateful. And nearly everyone female and indigenous made their interest clear in subtle and not-so-subtle ways. Adrian handled it as best he could. Polite but distant, friendly but not encouraging. It felt wrong to reject them outright, given their circumstances. But it felt equally wrong to pursue something just out of pity or obligation. He avoided Tivara. That felt worst of all. A month after his arrival, a dust storm rolled in from the western plains. The settlement hunkered down, securing everything that might blow away. Adrian found himself assigned to the Emergency Coordination Center, a reinforced bunker beneath the administrative building. Tivara was there, of course, along with a dozen others, monitoring conditions and ready to respond to any damage. The storm raged for 16 hours. The two of them ended up on the same watch shift, monitoring structural sensors in awkward silence. Finally, Tivara spoke. "You've been avoiding me. I've been busy. Don't lie. It's beneath you." Her patterns flickered with something sharp. "Maybe anger. If you're not interested, just say so. I can handle rejection." "It's not that simple, isn't it?" She turned to face him fully. "You find me unattractive. That's fine. Biology isn't negotiable. That's not it at all." "Then what?" Adrian struggled for words. "I don't want to be someone's solution to a problem. I don't want to be with someone because their civilization needs reproduction. I want—" He stopped. "What? What do you want?" "I want what everyone wants. To matter to someone, to be chosen for who I am, not what I represent." Tivara was silent for a long moment. Her patterns cycled through colors he didn't know how to interpret. Finally, they settled into a deep, steady violet. "You think I'm interested in you because you're human and male, aren't you?" "Those things drew my attention, yes, made me notice you, but that's not why I—" She paused. "When you were fixing the water system, you explained every step to me. Not because I asked, because you wanted me to understand, to learn. Most of the human engineers treat us as labor, not collaborators. That's just basic respect. Exactly. Her patterns brightened. You see us as people, as equals. You listen when we speak. You ask questions about our history, our culture. You eat at the mixed tables instead of isolating with your own kind. These things matter, Adrian, more than you know. The storm howled outside. Inside the bunker, a different kind of tension filled the air. I find you compelling, Tivara continued. Your competence, your kindness, the way you solved a problem that had stumped our best minds for weeks, the way you treat my people with dignity even when it costs you social standing with your own. She moved closer. Is it so hard to believe I might want you for who you are? Yes, Adrian said honestly. Because I'm not special. I'm just an engineer who couldn't make it work on Earth. You're an engineer who fixed our water system in 3 days, who's already improved a dozen other failing systems, who makes my patterns brighten just by existing. Her voice dropped to something softer. And maybe you're someone who could choose to be here, with me, not out of obligation, but because you want to. Adrian felt something shift inside him, a wall he'd built around himself, brick by careful brick after each failed relationship on Earth. The wall that said he wasn't enough, would never be enough, should stop trying. I'm afraid, he admitted. Of what? Of failing again, of letting you down, of being just another disappointment. Tivara's patterns blazed so bright he could feel the heat from them. She reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement, and placed her palm against his chest. He could feel his heartbeat accelerating under her touch. What if you're not? She said. What if you're exactly what you appear to be, a good man trying his best in a complicated situation? The storm began to ease outside. The howling wind dropped to a dull roar. Adrian placed his hand over hers. Her skin was cool and smooth, the bioluminescent patterns pulsing against his fingers. I don't know how to do this, he said. Neither do I. But maybe we could figure it out together. He thought about the last month, about the easy conversations over repairs and the comfortable silences during long work sessions, about how Tivara had taught him to read the basic emotional meanings of pattern colors, about the way she laughed a harmonic sound that made him smile every time. Maybe Keshra had been right. Maybe his choices mattered more than he'd realized. I'd like that, he said. Her patterns exploded with light, so bright the room took on an azure glow. She made a sound he'd never heard before, something between a laugh and a chime. Really? Really? She kissed him then, or something like a kiss. Her lips were cooler than human but soft. The gesture was tentative, uncertain, achingly hopeful. He kissed her back. When they broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Her patterns had shifted to a warm gold that reminded him of sunset. We should probably get back to monitoring the sensors, she said. Probably. Neither of them moved. Outside, the storm passed. Inside, something new began. The next months transformed Adrian's understanding of what home meant. He spent his days improving the settlement's infrastructure, training indigenous engineers in earth techniques, while learning their own elegant solutions to problems human technology approached with brute force. His evenings were split between communal dinners and quiet time with Tivara, walking the Purple Hills or talking late into the night about everything and nothing. Their relationship developed slowly, learning each other's bodies and customs, navigating the small misunderstandings that came from different biologies and cultural contexts. He learned to read her patterns fluently. She learned to interpret his facial expressions. The other indigenous women accepted the relationship with grace. A few were disappointed, but most seemed genuinely happy for Tivara. The human contingent was more divided. Some approved. Others thought he was making a mistake. Chen joked that Adrian was starting a trend 2 other human indigenous couples had formed in the following weeks. 6 months after his arrival, Tivara took him to meet the survivors, the indigenous males who had withdrawn from society. They lived in a compound in the Western Hills. 15 of them, the youngest barely 20, the oldest nearly 60. They farmed and made art and spoke little. When they looked at Adrian, their patterns went dark with pain. They can't accept what happened, Tivara explained later. They see the human men as replacements, as evidence that they've failed their people. That's not fair to them, no. But trauma rarely is. He thought about those men often, about how loss could break people in ways that never healed, about how he'd been broken in much smaller ways and had struggled to put himself back together. A year after his arrival, the settlement held a bonding ceremony. 4 couples, 2 human indigenous pairs and 2 indigenous-only pairs. Adrian and Tivara stood before the assembled community, exchanging vows that blended Earth and indigenous traditions. When he placed the ring on her hand, a simple band of titanium, her patterns blazed brilliant white. The assembled crowd erupted in cheers and harmonic chiming. Later, at the celebration, Tobias approached him. "You look happy." "I am. I didn't think it was possible. Here, I mean. Thought I'd just put in my 3 years and go back to Earth." He paused. "But watching you two, maybe I was wrong." "Maybe you were." The settlement continued to grow. New colonists arrived. Children were born, some human, some indigenous, some hybrid. The water system Adrian had repaired ran flawlessly. The structural improvements held against storms and thermal stress. 2 years after his arrival, Tivara told him she was pregnant. Her patterns flickered through a rainbow of colors as she delivered the news, cycling too fast for him to interpret. Joy, fear, hope, uncertainty. "We knew it was possible," she said. "The medical interventions were successful, but I didn't expect, so soon." He pulled her close, feeling her cool skin against his. "It's okay. We're okay." "Are we?" Her voice was small. "Hybrid pregnancies are risky. The biology is similar but not identical. There could be complications. Then we'll handle them, together." She buried her face against his chest, her patterns settling into a steady, warm gold. "I'm terrified." "Me too, but also happy. Really happy." "Really?" "Really." Their daughter was born 6 months later, after a labor that lasted 30 hours and left both parents exhausted. She came into the world wailing, her skin a pale lavender that darkened to blue-violet over the first few weeks. The patterns appeared at 3 months, faint traces of bioluminescence that grew stronger as she developed. They named her Mira, for mirrors, for reflection, for the way she embodied both her parents' peoples. She was healthy, perfect. A living symbol of what could be built on this strange world. Adrian held her in the purple twilight of Vesper's endless day, watching her patterns pulse in time with her breathing. Tivara sat beside him, exhausted but radiant. "I never thought I'd have this," he said quietly. "What?" "A family, something that mattered, a reason to stay." Tivara leaned her head against his shoulder. "You gave us water, structure, safety. Do you know what you've given me?" "What?" "Hope, real hope. Not the desperate kind that we've survived on for 15 years. The kind that builds toward tomorrow." He kissed the top of her head, careful not to disturb Mira's sleeping form. "You gave me that too." The settlement hummed with life around them. Human and indigenous voices blended in the evening air. Somewhere, someone was playing music earth instruments harmonizing with indigenous tones. This was home now. Not because it was easy, but because he'd chosen it. Because Tivara had chosen him. Because they'd built something together that was stronger than the sum of its parts. Mira stirred in his arms, her patterns flickering. She opened her eyes, human-shaped but with vertical pupils, and looked at her parents with an expression of such trust that Adrian felt his heart contract. "Welcome to Vesper," he whispered to his daughter. "It's complicated here, but it's worth it." The dual suns set over the purple hills, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet. Tivara's patterns glowed soft gold beside him. Mira made small, contented sounds. Adrian Holbrook had come to a new planet looking for a fresh start. He'd found something better. He'd found home. If you have enjoyed the story, tell YouTube to send you more stories like this by subscribing to this channel, liking the video, and leaving a comment.